So, anyway, but it's strange for me because, you know, writers are really not supposed to be recognized or to be famous and renowned, and we're supposed to be the secret agents. And it's strange. I can remember going to Fenway Park probably, I'm going to say maybe 10 years ago. My kids were smaller then, and one of my sons said, you know, you're always getting bothered, why don't you put on a pair of sunglasses? So I did, and this little 8-year-old kid says to his mother, look, Ma, it's Stephen King in sunglasses. But the first time that I ever knew that something was changing in my life, I went on a book tour for a book called The Dead Zone. That was the first time. It's like Stephen King's greatest hits. But don't stop. I mean, but that was so long ago. I was on the road with Kitty Kelly, who had just written a book about Frank Sinatra. My mother used to call him Frankie the Snob. She used to say, he'll never be Bing. And Jerzy Kosinski, and what a shock when Jerzy Kosinski committed suicide, because I thought that he was the most cheerful, magnetic, wonderful guy. You'd go out and spend all day scarfing media, small town media, small city media, which is what you were supposed to do. We were definitely on the chicken circuit. And he always made you feel like you'd just blown the tread off a Russian tank at the end of the day and grab you and give you a big hug. But I discovered that what the tour is, basically, in those days there were these things, a lot of you won't know about these things. They were very old now, they were called newspapers. And, the idea was that the newspaper would ask you into Cleveland or Cincinnati or maybe Austin, someplace like that, and you would go to a dinner, but before the dinner, you would scarf every bit of media that you could possibly get. You'd do the local magazines, and there was always an AM program, whatever it was AM Cleveland or AM Albany or AM something or other. But whatever it was, it meant getting up at 5 o'clock with a hangover from the night before and going in and talking to somebody and doing that. And you did it all day long, and the day climaxed with the newspaper's dinner, where you ate what Jerzy Kosinski used to call beige food. There was always chicken or fish, and there was always this sort of pallid gravy. And so I was in Pittsburgh, and I did all this stuff, the AM Pittsburgh and all the rest. It was near the end of the tour. And the last act was dinner up on this thing. It's called the Incline. No way to get down. You're just sort of stuck up there. And this is the part of the story where I have to be careful. I have to choose my words very carefully. There's this thing called Montezuma's Revenge, where you have to visit the nearest convenience early and often. And this restaurant where we were had a grandiloquent bathroom, but there were no doors on any of the stalls. And it was the low point in my life, rushing in there and sitting down, and the whole tour came out. You know what I'm saying? And I'm thinking things can't get any worse. And there was a washroom attendant who was roughly 150 years old. Slowly turns and looks at me in the stall and starts walking toward me with a pad. He says, aren't you Stephen King? First time I was ever recognized. Anyway, he said, I saw you on AM Pittsburgh, can I have your autograph? But the thing about being a writer is people look at you, you know, you guys really, at some point, have got to give yourselves a hand. You're out on Friday night because of books. I mean, for Christ's sake, clap! Books. The most potent weapon against the assholes of the world. Throw your brain into gear, turn off Dancing with the Stars, and read a book. Why not? Even compared to a movie, go out, buy a book, $26. I mean, if you went to a movie, the tickets alone, the popcorn, and then you come home, the babysitter, the parking, don't get me going. Anyway, but the thing about us is people look at us and they know us from somewhere. If you knew how many times people have walked up to me and said, "Aren't you Steven Spielberg?" And I always say, "Yes." Because I want to get along. I'm an obliging guy. When I was a kid, my mother used to say, "Steven, if you were a girl, you'd always be pregnant." It's probably true. Oh, God. Toward the end of her life, I can remember her saying to my brother and I, we'd had any number of girlfriends, she said, "You boys were either awfully lucky or awfully polite." But the best, I'm going to move on from here. I don't want to take too long on this, but the best thing that ever happened to me in terms of the whole idea of being famous was in Nathan's Hot Dogs in New York. I went in, get ready for it. I mean, I went in, I ordered a hot dog and some sauerkraut and a Coke or a Pepsi, whatever it was. This was around the time of the Dead Zone, when I still grew a beard, because the beard was black, you know, and instead of all, you know, sort of old guy. I mean, I know I'm an old guy. I had a birthday the day before yesterday. 64, I'm in a fucking Beatles song! It beats being dead. Like the guy says, you get out of bed in the morning and put out your elbows. If you don't bump wood, you're doing okay. So I'm in Nathan's, and I'm eating my hot dog, and there's a pass-through in the kitchen. I see the cook back there looking at me. He sees me looking at him. He's like, "What are you doing this thing?" Pretty soon he's looking again, and I'm thinking to myself, he knows who I am. So finally he came out and said, "Aren't you Francis Ford Coppola?" And I said yes, and I signed him. But it's strange to realize, you know, in your old age, somewhere between, you know, there are three ages of man. There's youth, there's middle age, and you look fucking great. And I've reached the third age, and at some point I became, not through any big master plan, America's boogeyman. And Halloween is my least favorite holiday. But, you know, I think what happened was Boris Karloff died, and Alfred Hitchcock died, and finally even Rod Serling died. They said, "Kid, you got the job." So I said, "Does it pay?" And they said, "Yeah, man." So, but questions come with that, you know, and people want to know how that happened, you know, and they come at it in this oblique way, you know. They'll say, "What was your childhood like? What were you like as a kid?" This is, you know, the curse of Freud. What they mean is, what fucked you up? So bad that you turned out the way that you did. And the answer is really nothing. Well, with the possible exception of Well, when I was 8 or 9, our bedtime story was Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. That's true. That was what, and what I remember, okay, and this to me is almost like the basis of what I do, not on purpose, but just because I'm drawn that way. I used to say, when people would say, why did you choose to do what you do? I would say, what makes you assume that I had any choice? And what I remember about Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is, in one of his Mr. Hyde periods, he's walking along this side of the road, and a mother and a young girl are walking, a little girl maybe 6, 7 years old, and Mr. Hyde walks right over her, knocks her down and walks over her, and her bones are breaking and snapping. And the little girl is screaming, and Hyde turns around and walks over her again. I never forgot that. And I guess maybe it might have twisted me a little bit, but I wouldn't say for sure. But my mother used to say, and this is really the basis of it, she'd say, think of the worst thing that could happen. And then whatever happens will be better than that. Only somebody from New England could really think that way, but it sort of became my mantra. You know, it's sort of, I would think of the worst thing and I would try to articulate it. It's made me a lot of money. It's also made me a little bit paranoid. It's like, we're all here now together and we're having a wonderful time because we're together. But later, you will have to go out in the dark, park your car, and it's a true fact well, I say true fact. People say that immediately, the audience assumes you're talking bullshit. So, but anyway, it's a statistical probability that 1 in every 50 of you have left your car unlocked. You forgot to lock your car. And I think the chances are very small that a psychotic person could even now be in the parking lot trying doors. But if there was a psychotic person, the chance that he would have a very large knife are greater, proportionally greater, than that he would not. And that's why I think it would be very wise to check your car, front seat, back seat, trunk maybe, before you get in. But of course, 1 in 75 forgets to lock the house. And you know,